So welcome to the ACPOHE Physio at Work podcast. In this podcast, we shed light on OH Physiotherapy, that's Occupational Health Physiotherapy, and the very important work that physiotherapists undertake in private and public organisation, in education and in society in shaping the health of Britain. So this is a limited series. We are looking at hopefully 10 to 12 episodes where we'll be talking to experts and wonderful people that work as occupational health physiotherapists and to understand the job and the work that they do. So today's guest is Rinske Van der Weij. Yes, thank you. Welcome. And me and Rinske, we met many years ago in whilst we were both working in the Grimsby, northeast Lincolnshire region of the UK. And at the time, I wasn't really aware that she did work within occupational health. So, but that's become clear over the years. And yeah, we're very lucky to have her with her today. So today, we're going to try to build a bit of understanding of the work that occupational health physiotherapists undertake in the oil and gas industry, and perhaps shed a bit of light on behaviors, knowledge and skills and more that's required to do such work. So yeah, thanks, Rinske, for being here.
Thank you.
And just to start us off, perhaps just tell us a little bit about yourself. Where do you come from? What was your pathway to end up working in the oil and gas industry as a physiotherapist?
Okay, thank you for having me. So I am from Holland and I qualified in 1996 in Amsterdam. I trained in Amsterdam. It's a 4-year course in Holland. And already back then in Holland, a lot of companies would have gyms and would have physios in-house. I would say because there were too many physios in Holland at the time already. So they just spread out to wherever they could. I did some traveling and I moved fairly soon to the UK. As most foreigners, I started down south and worked my way up by the middle of England and ended up in Grimsby. Before Grimsby, I did a lot of sports, like a lot of as physios. We start off because, we think it's the bee's knees. So then I moved to Grimsby and all of a sudden I was presented with an awful lot of industry here. We have the Humber, so we have a port, we have the North Bank, we have the South Bank, and a lot of companies actually are based in the North East Links area. So I started off in pediatrics, met another physio and decided to set up a business. And we started taking over. We met another physio and she was already doing physio in one of the companies down here. So she was retiring or looking after her parents, moved up north, and she offered us this contract. So we took that on. We then started to get a real feel for occupational health and enjoyment.
What contract was it? Like what type of contract?
At time it was Cortals Accordis, which is now Blue Star Fibres and Lensing. And it was our first sort of contract in-house that we took on.
Was it technology based, or was it gas and oil and gas?
No. They make fibres that is used in the aerodynamics industry. So they make like tensile fibres that is used in aviation and the brake pads and stuff like that. Oh. So that's how we joined ACPOHE, which was a very small group of people at the time. I think occupational health was a very small group of people. And I remember a Jackie and a Ben, but I'm sure they're retired by now as well, because my business partner is retired as well. We started really chipping away at contacting local business. We were proud that we were a local business, that we understood the local sort of population. A lot of companies here employed like long-term families and local people. So we started chipping away at the refinery. Now, that took absolutely years of just chipping away, contacting, chipping away, contacting. As you start to get one occupational health nurse, they then put you in contact with another one and another one. I think we started doing some get-togethers of occupational health nurses and physios, and we were still a very rare breed, I would say. What happened in 2001, there was a blast at the refinery locally here, and it was a bank holiday blast. 2 people got injured, and that really triggered the change in the refineries, and we finally managed to get in, and we got sort of a clinic on site. We've always been on site at the refinery where I've been 25 years. Apart from that, we also then met someone else that we worked with, and her husband was in OHM offshore. So he needed to do some face fit testing. So we went on a face fit testing course, and we also did a course. All the offshore platforms at the time, so this goes back a bit, were all BP around here flying from Humberside. So we did a face fit test course, and we were asked to do a training course.
What's that? What's face fit? Is that for masks?
Yeah, for any of the masks, for like emergency masks, or the guys that do the blasting, or whenever they work and have dust masks. So all kinds of, and they all had to be face fit tested. So we started off with that, and then whilst we're offshore, we said we can also do this and we could do that, and we started doing clinics. And for that, of course, yes, we do have to have a helicopter training. And we just realized very quickly that industry, the biggest enjoyment in industry is that you got to be a physio, so a specialist within a bigger team, but you got to learn all these other things that the hospital had never taught us. We got to put on, our hard hats and our coveralls and our safety boots and our PPE. And I learned about refining. I learned about, drilling oil rigs and wondering who ever started that, really. We did the helicopter training. It was just such a fun journey, because we got to do all these new things that I would have never had the opportunity to do if we hadn't placed ourselves into industry. But for me, 25 years, my main clinic was one of the refineries.
So you're going to have to tell us about the helicopter training, because that sounds brilliant. So what does that entail?
For a lot of the guys, of course, the helicopters are literally just buses that rattle, and a lot of them really don't want to do it. So it is a requirement. They do the helicopter dunking. All I remember was, you tip upside down. All I remember was a really annoying fella, because there's always one annoying that say like, why we're doing this, if a helicopter crashes, we'll all die anyway. And I thought, dude, this is a lifeline for people. For us, it was just a jolly, it was absolutely a jolly. I didn't have children at the time, so it was brilliant.
So it's like a helicopter shell that gets then dunked into water and then tipped upside down. Is that correct?
Then you put your rebreather on, you push people out. You push people out of the way, because I was sat in the middle in those days, because, I was a girl and I should not sit near the window. I would now say to anybody that I'll always sit near the window. I ended up pushing this loudmouth out of the window, past them to the divers, and got up, really. But it was fascinating to see, though, because for a lot of those guys, this is everyday life. And for them, you know, we learned a lot about even the helicopter pilots at the time, because helicopters have a lot of vibration. So we got into the Humberside Airport as well, and the helicopter terminal, because pilots sit there all day. They're literally like vibrating buses, and they have an awful lot of back issues from the position that they sit in. It's not comfortable. And I remember even myself getting quite an acute back pain every time I've been offshore. And I thought, it is that. You end up going to the heli sort of port, you sit, and then you have the safety briefing and you sit. And then you sit on the helicopter. And then when you get offshore, they go, do you want a coffee? Come and sit down. And you have a chat with the nurse. And then we did the face fit testing and we sat. Then you have a break and you sit. And there was so much sitting that by the end of the day, I was okay on that day, but always the day after that. And again, it's that constant analysing that was fascinating. And it's helped me even just by doing that sort of things. And I'll get to that, because the biggest thing with occupational health, I would say, and with oil and gas, is go and walk around the site that you work. Go and look at what the guys and girls are doing. Go into every aspect. Go around the offices. Put your hard hat on and your PPE and go outside. Go around on the plant. And I think communication is so important. Nobody knows what we are doing. Nobody knows of the field leaders what we are doing. It's up to us to communicate that and to get that round. So we designed, whilst doing offshore work, we developed a course that was, we called it Stay Stable, Move Smart. And it was all to do with how you can use your body and how strong our bodies are, rather than going in from the constant, don't do this, don't do that. You know, there is so much of like what you can't do, but nobody was telling us, well, if you can't use that valve, what can I do? If I can't do 12-hour shifts, what can I do? So we just flipped it ourselves from a very can't do culture to a can do culture. And so we started doing this offshore training as well. We then changed that to onshore as well. So I then fell pregnant. The minute you're pregnant, you cannot fly. I think whilst I was still pregnant or had just had a baby, I should have done my helicopter retraining, which I just didn't do because I didn't want to fly offshore anymore. But this training, the Stay Stable, Move Smart, it's still run now. So when I was pregnant, I think I did it twice a week at the refinery for pretty much through my whole pregnancy, I think Maddie, my firstborn, can recite that training fully. But even the guys now that have taken it over, they are still doing that training. And it's a great way to just tell the guys that, yes, the plant outside is heavy manual stuff. But actually, if you see it as a gym, and if you see your work as you are the athlete, and we need to get you hardened and task-specific rehab, work hardening. If you see yourself as an athlete and that is your gym, then we can do really specific rehab and keep you at work happier. So that training sort of is now done for all the new starters as well. So every person on the refinery has had that training and hopefully know that what we tried to do as well, when we first came on site in 2001, the doctor was pretty much in charge of all the restrictions. But what happened was, again, there was a very much don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. And the field leaders go, but what can they do then? What the patient would even say, but I can do something. What can I do? And so together, like what would happen is that someone would come in with a back pain or acute back or whatever, and the doctor would say, we'll sit you behind a computer. So that person would all of a sudden sit behind a computer for 10 to 12 hours. But actually the patient would say, but I'm so much better walking around. So now what we'll do, as long as they're safe, we would have them, say, do inspection duties. We have them do their exercises whilst on site. We might do an absolute restriction of climbing ladders, but a relative restriction on walking. And that way, so we help the field and the team leaders to understand how we can help them to rehabilitate their worker back into work, or maintain at work. So we quickly changed that around. We would have people with like shoulder injuries, and the doctor would say, let's have no big valves. But the guys would come back. And I say guys only because in those days, in 2001, we had no real female operators. We do have now. So where I say guys, I mean males and females, or
everyone.
Yes, everyone. So the patients would come in with a shoulder problem, and the doctor would restrict them on big valves. And they would say, well, actually, the big valves are in a good position. It's the smaller valves at lever or in an awkward position. That's the ones I can't operate. So we would often say after patients, if we really were not sure, we go with that patient, that employee, we would go on site with the nurse and myself, and would meet the patient and the field leader, and we just have a look at the areas. If it was an area that sometimes needed just a little bit of ergonomic tweaking, we put a report in and they would actually change it, which is incredible. But it's been a lot of work, hard work, enthusiastic work, and communication. It's just communication. Stick to what you believe you're good at. And that is your part in the chain of everything. Sorry, I'm talking way above all my...
Brilliant. This is great information. And there's so many things that we can talk about. So you were mentioning about the ergonomics, which is a core competency of occupational health physiotherapists, or certainly should be. You were saying that when you picked up on ergonomic issues, then you could put a report in, and the company you were working in, they were pretty good at changing it. Can you give examples? What type of problems did you come across, and how did you assess? How did you assess it? How did you come to the conclusion that this particular thing, this particular task could be a problem?
So again, I'm going to talk around that again, because often people will become a patient and then we analyze. And I always say to younger physios as well, see your patients really as athletes, analyze them. We analyze sport, but for some reason we don't always analyze work. But if you learn to listen and get to understand what they do, so again, walk around your site. That will help you loads. I realized very quickly that my young guys, all they do when the first starters, young guys and girls, what they do is literally trace pipes. They literally walk round side to trace pipes. Now, when you're tracing pipes, you're constantly in extension. Our refinery that I worked, all our hard hats had to have peaks. Okay, whereas if you look at the scaffolders and our next door refinery, they were peakless hard hats. So if you have a peakless hard hat, you can use your eyes more to look up. If you have a peak, you've got to look around it to look up. So what we often saw is not neck problems, but like elbow problems. But those guys would say, but I've done nothing. And I thought it was the spanners, but actually it was just like an impingement of the neck. So we would we added that to the course of stay stable, move right. So that we can't change. We can't change the pipes, and the glasses and the peak on the hard hat was a requirement. So we had to walk around that. So again, we just started to give everybody more ideas. If you looked up a bit, reverse the curve, learn to reverse the curve. We had another guy that he came in with another neck problem, but he worked in a lab. So we were based in the Occupational Health department with the nurses and the doctor and the lab guys as well. the laboratorium. Now, one guy was 6 foot something, but his back-to-back was like a lot shorter. They had to use like the same microscope, and we had to raise it for him, but we had to lower it for her. So we just got someone to design like a high-low type of desk within their laboratorium benches, so that both those workers could actually use it in a much, much nicer way. Again, if you look back in the early 2000s, there were really not many provisions for really tall people. And again, what we saw, of course, is if you have a really tall person, we go, yes, let's give them a really good chair. But a good chair is no use if you've got to put so low to get under your desk. So we started doing, like, initially we raised the desk with the blocks until the hydraulic raising desks came on.
So start using the sit to stand desks type of thing.
Yeah. So a lot of the office workers have them now. We had, if anybody had new benches like made, we tried to get them hydraulic. So again, people from different heights could work in the same workstation, basically. We had a problem with, so say like in refining, I found that there were patterns. So one part of the refinery is tank farm. Those guys do a lot of in and out of cars. And the vans are like they have that seat that is very straight up. So they can't really move their seat further back because they have the protection there for the rest of the van. So again, you get the guys that are taller and they don't fit in. So what they would get is hard hits to the top of the van, or they're twisting into the van and get knee problems. So what we saw in tank farm is a lot of knee problems and a lot of neck problems. And once we sort of had a day on tank farm, we really saw the patterns that would happen. Tank farm at the time as well had a lot of, they had to do testing. So they had to walk and climb up the tank. Tank farms have a lot of stairs. So these guys actually often have really good quads and are very strong in the lower part of the body. As time went on, the tanks used to have round entries. And me and the nurse at some point did tank entry, and we could not get in until a guy said, no, you've got to do it like this. So a lot of things that happen at work and on site are techniques, getting a good technique, and us learning their technique helped an awful lot. What we then started to do was, because if we wanted to rehabilitate someone back, say on tank farm, they have to do tank entry because they have to clear out. With the tank entry also comes wearing of BA kit. So
what's that?
Breathing apparatus.
I see.
So we started to get a training BA kit so we can help the guys and ask them to put on a BA kit with that weight. We got an area where we can do tank entry like on the dry. We got ourselves some ladders that we can play and try with, some vertical ladders, because now over time our refinery has changed a lot of the vertical ladders into stairs, and our round tank entry have become little doors. So already over time they've changed. Sometimes a valve would literally be on that side, and all we said is like, just move it over to that side. That would make more sense, really. There were things like ray loading. Ray loading would come a lot with shoulder, because what they do is they have to go between the two engines or the wagons. And what they have to do once it's coupled, they have to put the chain on. Now, these are heavy trains. The chains are heavy. So what they did is they had a leverage to try to lever it from the outside. The best way, the most ergonomic way, would be to dive under the wagons and then grab the chain and put it to the other part of the wagon. But again, this is not always safe. This requires, how do you say this nicely? this does require people not to be too big. So helicopter training, helicopters will have a weight limit because you can't get on your survival suit.
Yes.
We, on the refinery next door, we had an incident. It was not an incident. A person who became so big that he couldn't fit through the turnstiles. Wow. But there was nothing written about size and weight and what you could be and what you could not be. And they had to literally open the vehicle's sort of entrance to get this person on side. And we had to do something about that. And so I think we did write a bit of a policy that you have to get through the turnstiles, because otherwise you become not just an unsafety for the side, but for your colleagues as well. If we had, say, rehabilitation of fractures, we can't have crutches on site, but you are allowed to limp. Okay, so say you work in the control room, or what we would do is, even if you're an operator outside and you have a fractured ankle, we got a good idea of the time patterns and what we needed to do. So we would have people first, as soon as they could walk safely, we would have them on site, but not on crutches. We could just about get you on site on a stick if we put you in the control room. So an outside operator might start inside first. And then what we will do gradually is like an restriction. So say ankle fractures or ankle injuries, they do not so good at the beginning of the shift. Then they get a window where they're better, but then they get a window at the end of the shift where the pain is too much again. So an ankle person often can't do what they did at the end of the shift, what they were able to do at the beginning of the shift. So we had to relay this and teach this to the team, the field leaders, that, an ankle responds very different to a back might get better as we walk around. So we could get people on site, but like say in the gas and oil, or oil and gas or refining, we always have to have an emergency exit strategy. So any patient that gets rehabilitated back on site, we have to have an exit strategy. And that is not chucking someone over your shoulder and running. So often what we would do is have emergency bikes. So say an ankle patient could come back to work, but if they were not able to run yet or to get out quick, we would park a bike outside their control room just in case they had to get out.
Like literally a bike?
Yeah. But they often cycle around anyway. The site is really, really big, of course. And because you work with oil and gas, you can't really have watches, phones, things like that. So no electric bikes, no electric scooters, anything like that. So,
I can see that be a concern, yeah.
It's actually I used and used really well, actually. So yeah, we often would, it's so important to just listen to your patient. They have all the information and they are our teachers. Every single patient is our teacher. But what is nice in occupational health is, and in the oil and gas, we got so well established with the nurses and myself and the doctor, and we had a CBT specialist. So if like someone would struggle to get up the high stacks that you can see far from away because of height, fear of height, we bring a CBT guy in and work with that. Now, again, so much has changed over 25 years. So now they have my refinery has 2 drones, and we have drone engineers, and the engineers will now ask the drone guys, can you go and film certain areas of the refinery? So it saves an awful lot of manpower going up and down, really. What is fascinating to see is the change that if, say, like, I had a fascinating 2 patients, and they both had ankylosing spondylosis. Now, one was an older guy and one was a younger guy. And what happened was the younger guy, so the older guy was still an outside operator, and he realized, I'm so much better for moving. The younger guy, as sort of his career progressed, he got promotion. Now, promotion often means that you work less outside and more in the office. And within a year, we got problems with his body because he wasn't moving enough, and he could not get enough movement in a day to mobilize. So he actually chose to go back outside and do more outside work, because in the oil and gas, my refinery was a massive, big gym. And I saw it like that. And I saw all the employees literally as athletes. So he did much better. We had an IT guy that really struggled with the sitting down, what they do, and the carrying of equipment all over the place, plugging in on these, blah, blah, blah. Now we got a gym. I can't remember when our gym was installed. It's an awesome gym. It has the pools, so it allowed us to do some rehab, not just in the on-site. So we were in the refinery side, behind the gates in the OH Health Centre, but it allowed us to also take people into the gym and do really specific rehab for what they needed. So this IT guy, literally in his plain clothes, would now and then just literally hop on the treadmill for 5-10 minutes and just would walk, because that helped his back.
Great.
So it's just been an awesome 25 years of learning an industry that I had no idea about. We then worked with the nurses, very close with the nurses. In my refinery, it is the nurses that refer to myself. They also have private medical health. So we had to work very little, in all honesty, with NHS colleagues, because we could bypass the whole NHS system.
Can I actually ask you about that, Rinske? Yeah. So in terms of just the process, and I guess things also changed over the years, but would employees that were injured or had any problems, what was the pathway for them to end up with you? Was it through a doctor and then from the doctor to you, or how did that work? Could the managers refer directly into you, or people come and see you?
Literally anybody. So what also we made a big deal about that you do not have to have done your injury at work, because any injury, any pain, any problem, it will affect you physically. If you're in pain, it will physically affect your work. However, these guys work often shifts. Now, I also treat office staff, and they're day staff, so I treat both, day and office staff. But whatever pain you have, if, say, you can't do your hobbies or your sports, or it stops you from running or cycling, that will affect mental health as well. So literally, we don't mind where you've done your injury. Within the OH Health system, within the treatment room, within these 4 rooms, everything that's discussed is confidential. So it doesn't matter to me where your injury happened.
Exactly.
If it affects work, then mentally or physically, it doesn't matter. We can help you. So the nurses were our biggest allies. The doctors used to be, again, in the 1990s and the early 2000s, there used to be GPs, working GPs that did some work like on the refinery.
Yeah.
That flipped, of course, where all of us had to have proper training. And now we have occupational health physicians, but they tend to be now brought in as and when needed. So if there's a bigger case, if there's medical retirement cases, they need to have an occupational health physician, but it's an absolute teamwork. And as the physio, we did most of the return to work planning with the nurses. Yeah. When it comes to musculoskeletal, because we had such a we had such a good knowledge in the end of the refinery. And it's great when someone comes in and go, especially the new ones, they said, oh, I work on, cokers. I bet you don't know what it is. I go, well, yeah, actually, I got up earlier and I watched you guys do the changing of the coke drums. One of the other things, actually, it doesn't literally matter where your injury happened or where your pain. I'm a big advocate, or please don't sit with your pain and leave it until the day you go on holiday when you've just had it. So I kept communicating. Get yourself seen earlier. You don't waste my time. What is interesting with refineries as well, and the hard hats changed over the years as well. So hard hats used to sit quite low on a head. Mm-hmm. Now they've got something on the inside and they sit higher up on their head. So we would get a lot of hard hats hitting scaffolding, either that way. So mini whiplashes away, like in effect, like mini whiplashes on the neck. But what they would come in with is like an elbow pain, or they would come in with tingling or arm pain, not per se neck pain.
Referred symptoms.
We just didn't mind where your problem was, where you think you've done it. I had a fascinating guy, and I have so many fascinating guys, and I do apologise about your time and all your questions.
Carry on.
He has been an operator, outside operator, and then we got the gang that is sort of my age group, so we all got in our 40s, 50s, and they hired a 4G football pitch on a Monday. So all the shift workers could go and start play football. I don't know if this was his first football match, but he ruptured both patella quads, both patella tendons, both at the same time. So he sat himself on the pitch, pushed his kneecaps down and just waited. I have never seen a bilateral rupture like that. But you know what? That man worked his little bottom off together with ourselves. I think we did work with the NHS physios as well. He worked so hard, he got back to full duties, outside, climbing, walking. He did wear little knee braces, so he might maybe change a little bit to some inside work as well, but he got back to work. And those are the cases that are so exciting because they are like your athletes going back to work. I had another interesting case actually, but that was, I saw this fella for his back and we found a way for him to manage his back. We did then do a change from, I don't know where he was somewhere on site. And we changed for him to go to dock silos, which is an offside near the jetty where the oil and gas comes in, or not the gas, but the gas as well, actually, where things come in on the jetty in Immingham. And we changed him to there. But what he was doing all his Mackenzie work on the floor. So at some point, his field leader walks in and went, oh my God, what's happened? Is she back on? Oh, well, you need to be offside. You need to go. And he said, no, it's not gone. I just do a bit of this every hour to keep it right. So we again had to go in and teach the field leaders that sometimes they're not doing things because they're in pain, but they're doing movements because they don't want to be in pain. So that was fascinating as well to see how there was a panic of like, what's happened? But actually nothing has happened. He was just on the floor doing his thing and worked really well. And he's still there and doing really, really well.
That's fantastic. So, Rinske, so in terms of because you came in, you must have been the first physiotherapy team within that occupational health team setting and on the oil rigs and in the refinery. I guess you would have a really good understanding of what the culture was and also perhaps what the culture within the company is now. So is it possible for you to reflect on the impact that that you and the physiotherapists, and also guess the wider occupational health team, what do you feel like the effect that you guys have had on the culture and the company as a whole?
No physio can do it by themselves. We are nothing. I was nothing without the amazing OC Health nurses. They're all retired now. Without the amazing occupational health nurses. Without the nurses for us, again, are our main people, the link between the medical sort of things. So at my refinery, it was an absolute need for teamwork and communication. I know we had our nurses really communicating what OC Health. When we first started, I think OC Health and HR, we were really seen as bulldogs, and it was seen as like, well, you're only getting a physio on site because you only care about getting me back to work. And it's the company that is bothered, you know. They're not listening to me. It's all about the company. They just want me back at work. They don't care. Now, with a lot of communication, going outside, being seen, being visible, learning what these people do when they're outside, with a lot of communication and just, especially the nurses on a day-to-day basis, just teaching what we can do and how we can help them, changing again from a can't do on sick notes to a can do, helping the field leaders to understand a little bit conditions without breaching confidentiality, but very general understanding. And then trying to help them into what can they do. Like a back pain is good to walk around, better to walk around than to sit, or this specific person. And to help them understand that an ankle person might limp first, then walk really normal, but then limp again. But that's okay, that it's something that we expect. It's been 100% team effort, 100%. Could I have not done it on my own? What was beautiful to see is that our MSK, like percentage absence, reduced to such a small number. And I can't remember if the nurse got it back to like 2% or 3%, like hugely reduced. And we were so proud of that. However, what happens then in occupational health is because your numbers are so low and nobody is very off long-term with MSK, cost needs to be cut, like cost cutting, like things need to happen. And well, we have no MSK. So yeah, we cut that one. Or, you know, and then you have to work. And the same is with the ERT, you know. If there is no injury, so the emergency response team, if there's no emergencies, you think you don't need them. But when there is an emergency, they need to be ready. And that will, I think, forever be a battle. And I think that's why it goes so up and down, that, you know, if you go into a company where there's lots to get your teeth in, it's exciting. But once you're in a company and you've done lots of great work, they start to see, well, what you're doing here, because we haven't got that problem here. And they go, no. Now, again, at my refinery, our workers have medical health. So we found a way to utilize that for our physio as well, and play with that. So there was a part cost for the refinery and then a part cost for the insurance company. And that worked really well as well, actually.
That's so really interesting. I've actually never heard of that. On site, so that the insurance company could purchase some of the service.
The first initial assessment would be funded by the refinery. I will assess my patient. If I can get them right in one session, fantastic. If it needs a bit more, we then will trigger the insurance company and we utilize that. If it is a workplace accident, you know, that will be funded often by the refinery. And we had a budget at the refinery, then we had a budget for training, And then we utilize the combination of the insurance as well. Does need a bit of an admin team behind me, but I used to have a brilliant admin team as well. And again, I could not do it on my own, 100%.
Did you, and I was going to quickly reflect on that. It is always ironic that, or is it? But our job as physiotherapists in occupational health is to make ourselves unemployed. So if we train and educate everyone to do all the right things, and we're able to have an influence with the rest of the team on changing ergonomics within the company to make everything fantastic, well, ultimately, we should be out of work.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it says something about our success when we have no waiting list and we have a very low caseload,
Absolutely.
Could I very, very quickly ask you about the reports were you writing reports? So did you, or was it more like verbal feedback or?
No. Everything needs to be in writing. So we would put our notes on the occupational health system. So whatever I do with my patient would be on their system. We did I ever write paper notes still? I think we still had some written notes when I first started, but very quickly we went electronic. We were electronic before I think the NHS was. So I thought it would be better for the nurses and the doctors to see what I would be thinking, what I would be writing. So instead of lots of paperwork, we would have a system on that, on that occupational health system, that at the end with my plan, it would either be return to work on full duties, there will be restrictions, or there will be relative restrictions. So again, I'm not saying you can't climb, but you might have to do the shorter stacks rather than the really long stacks. Or you can climb in the first half of your shift, but not at the second half. Or there will be absolute restrictions, as in no climbing, or your knee is giving way, no work at height, and you can only do inspection duties or something. So there'll be absolute restrictions or relative restrictions.
And then could the employer access those reports on the portal? No.
That would only be for the medical centre. So this would only work if you have a medical centre. We have occupational health contracts where we have no medical centre and we only deal with HR. So those notes belong to us and the patient. Yeah. But at my refinery, it was all the medical centre. So what the nurse then would do is I would write it down. So either the field leader or the nurse would understand. They would extract that. They would pass that on to the field leaders with often a time that we would review them, or what our expected time is that this might take to recover from. Our reports often. Now, if I did a task analysis, or say like I went to look at rail loading, I went to look at the coke drums, we went to tank farm, or we do a DSE report or anything like that, that would be a separate report. And we would again just explain a little bit the effects of that task on the body, because that would be a way to get round not divulging any medical information. Now, some patients say, no, you can tell my bosses what the surgery had been done or whatever. And then we would write a report with sort of our findings and our ideas. Now, some of those ideas need an engineer and not a physio, but we would mainly sort of explain the effects of that task on the body, because that's analysed. That's our knowledge, really. Yeah. And I just had a thought and I'd totally forgotten, really.
It's okay. So, because I'm also aware that you got a busy clinic a little bit later on, and I think we have about, a maximum of 9 minutes, I think, before you probably have someone in. So I was wondering, so this podcast will be watched potentially or seen by people all around the world. That's the beauty of the internet. And I'm wondering, let's see if there's some aspiring physiotherapists out there that would really like to get into occupational health, and maybe oil and gas sounds like something they would really like to do, something they would like to get experience with. What would be your advice to them? How could they approach that to get into such an industry?
I think, again, it's a lot of chipping away, and no two refineries are ever the same. Just like businesses, even if you have the same business up north and down south, it will be a different atmosphere. So no two businesses are the same. I think if you do want to go in refining, I think there's only like 5 refineries in England. So living near a refinery would be a really handy thing already. You know, there's no point in me living like far away and wanting to do refinery work. We are lucky here that the occupational health team is still funded by the refinery. As you might have seen, and what we have seen over the years, I'm going to say sadly here, because I've seen it from the other side. So occupational health at my refinery and the other refinery, my refinery is bought by the refinery, so it belongs to the refinery. So getting to know occupational health nurses is so important. Getting to know occupational health physios is so important, because we got into that refinery by word of mouth, by talking to people. Now, the other refinery, it got outsourced, but luckily a local occupational health company got the contract. Sadly, what we've seen in an awful lot of occupational health places, like on the docks, there's a huge company that deals with our docks. It got outsourced to a national company. No, I shall be honest. They are not the local people. They are not the people that want to know about the local people, the local businesses. They seem to be less involved. They wanted to do physio. That is done by a nurse. They just say, well, we'll just pull some stuff off YouTube. And I feel so sad about that development, because that's over the 25 years. You know, we used to be so, as occupational health physios, we used to be so part of that company. And gradually it's just not international, maybe international, but national companies are just buying big national companies. And I just feel sad about that. And because you then have a lot of corporate like rules to adhere to. And I think some of the things that I could have done with my refinery, like all the on-site work, the task analysis, the walk rounds, the just looking for no reason at all, just saying to a guy, can I come and have a look in the lab? Can I see what you guys are doing? Can I look at your engine? Can I look at this? Can I look at that? And I don't think that can happen if you belong to a big company where you drive an hour to. And so I don't know currently. I think we have been very lucky to start this journey at a time and then made such a good name for us, and being lucky that the occupational health nurses and the refinery themselves was happy to keep us on as a local company. The only thing is, I think we did change from a partnership to a limited company, because a lot of corporate, they do want to rather deal with a limited company rather than sole traders or a partnership or anything like that. So I don't know if that's still the case, but yeah, a lot of changes. A lot of changes have happened over the last 25 years. I could talk about that for hours on end still.
Yeah, and look, so thank you so much for doing this. I know that a time has probably come to finish this talk, just simply because we set up about an hour for this, but I get a feeling that we could have talked about occupational health and what physiotherapists do for for much further and much longer. Thank you so much for your the fascinating insight into the work that you guys have done and what you do. I think it's an inspiration for people that will listen and listen to this and watch this. And yeah, I'm very grateful for you doing this session with me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Rinske. And I'm sure I'll speak to you later. We had a little chat earlier about maybe we'll do another podcast, because you have a very interesting life, interesting past, and I think it'll be fascinating to do something like that, but maybe in a different setting, perhaps.
I was just gonna say, occupational health has been such a fascinating journey, because when in an NHS team, you're just with physios and nurses and doctors and patients. Within occupational health, you are often the MSK expert, and it's actually a lovely place to be. And then you get to learn all these things. So at our refinery here, they do Chinook training, and we get to see and hear the Chinook, and that is so exciting. We get so excited if the £1 million a day crane gets driven in, and it literally is a crane that comes in parts, and like sometimes they build it within the refinery, and it's just awesome to see. And then, you know, to learn about the drones and what they can do, and to just, I am still so passionate about learning it. And I love that, because my patients are sometimes so miserable about looking at pipes and being at work in 12-hour days. And what we would sometimes do as well, actually, is say if there's a shutdown, what was interesting is as the shutdown goes on, so tiredness, fatigue, that is a huge risk, of course, of injuring. And what we would do is, instead of having a day clinic, we would do a night clinic, or we make it into so we can cover the day and night shift, or we started doing 12-hour days, 13-hour days with them, just to give them a feeling that we understand their work. We can never understand it. Nobody can ever understand anybody else. But to just
you would have to do the full 12-hour shift, wouldn't you?
Giving them an idea of, no, we're there here with you. And because towards the end of a shutdown, you know, towards the end of 13, 14-hour days, we just started to see more injuries. And we know that, do we? Fatigue is a bigger problem and a bigger risk factor than actually loading is. You know, we can load, we just got a graded load and get your work hardened. We get you strong for that task. There's still so much I can talk about, honestly. And that's not just that's not just the oil refinery. It's
and we haven't, because we haven't spoken really about mental health either, and like how fatigue and doing 12-hour shifts and you know, working hard and sustained over a longer period of time, what impact that potentially has on our mental health, and how much mental health that we see coming through with musculoskeletal problems, you know, what manifests itself as musculoskeletal problems. You're really at the base of it. We're looking at someone that's extremely stressed, or have a burnout, or high levels of anxiety, or depressed.
Yeah, so, and I think half the time we're counsellors, you know, and I still do hands-on work. And I think just that hands-on, especially in a world where we're all AI and hands-off, I really value the hands-on work. And I think if I give a little bit of me, I get so much more back from the patient. And if I get their trust, they're going to do some homework and they will get better. And I think so often patients just say to me that I just give them hope. Isn't that the most incredible job that we get to do? And please, you know, anybody, have passion, be enthusiastic, get to understand your workers, and just walk in those rooms with enthusiasm. Because if we get to give someone hope of quality of life, be it at work, being at home, that is incredible. That is a gift that we have as physios, and we should never, that gift of rehabilitation is incredible. incredible. And I've always carried that forward in occupational health. And I do less of it now. I've sold my business to two amazing, awesome physios. They are now going forward. They're sort of younger. They're 20 years younger. And they will do an awesome job in a whole new world, you know, because the world has really changed over the last 25 years.
It certainly has.
But it's an incredible place to be. It's an incredible journey. And that's what I say, I've got to see things that I've never even dreamt of when I was a junior learning about muscles. So, see, every day, honestly, every day approach it literally as a new eyes beginner's day, because every day there's something new to learn. And in occupational health, that it's just awesome, because it's non-medical stuff that we learn, and how exciting is that?